The Galactic Council had done many stupid things in its 3,000-year history, but inviting humans to the Fear Quotient Summit might have been the stupidest. I say this as someone who was there. My name is Vrix, and I'm a Threxian diplomatic observer, which is a fancy way of saying I get paid to watch other species make fools of themselves and file reports nobody reads. I've got 4 eyes, so technically I see twice as much foolishness as most species, lucky me. The summit was held on Carador Station, a massive orbital platform that looked like someone had welded together a dozen different architectural styles and hoped for the best. The station floated above Carador Prime, a planet so boring that its main export was instructional videos on proper filing techniques. Every species in the known galaxy measured fear the same way. Well, almost every species. We used the Phobo scale, a universal measurement system that quantified terror through vocal response patterns. Screams, shrieks, wails, howls. The louder you screamed, the more afraid you were. Simple, scientific, proven. The Vrelnoth, those 6-legged crystalline beings who thought they were the galaxy's gift to logic, had spent 2 centuries perfecting the system. They could tell you exactly how terrified someone was based on decibel readings, frequency patterns, and harmonic resonance. They were so proud of their little charts and graphs. Then humanity applied for council membership, and everything went sideways. The humans sent a delegation of 3. Commander Marcus Flynn, a military type with gray hair, and the kind of face that suggested he'd seen some things and wasn't impressed by any of them. Dr. Amara Singh, a xenobiologist who smiled too much for someone who studied alien life forms, and little Tommy Walsh, age 7, who apparently qualified as a diplomatic attaché because his mother was Admiral Walsh and could pull strings like a concert harpist. Why? I asked my supervisor Kelton, a blob, like Morphillian who communicated through color changes. Why would they bring a child to a scientific summit about fear measurement? Kelton pulsed a deep purple, which meant either confusion or indigestion. With Morphillians, it was hard to tell. Humans have strange customs. Perhaps the young one is a prodigy. Tommy Walsh looked like every human child I'd ever seen in the database files. Small, round-faced, with brown hair that stuck up in odd directions despite obvious attempts to flatten it. He wore a tiny suit that was already rumpled, and he carried a stuffed animal that resembled Earth's ursine species, but pink. The summit began in the Grand Conference Chamber, a circular room with seating for 200 delegates. High researcher Milvox, of Relnoth who looked like an angry chandelier, stood at the central podium. "Welcome, representatives," Milvox said, his voice echoing through translation devices. "Today, we demonstrate the universal nature of the Phobos scale. Fear, unlike culture or philosophy, is measurable, quantifiable, constant across all sapient species." I noticed Commander Flynn exchange a glance with Dr. Singh. She was still smiling. "That should have been my first warning. We have prepared simulations," Milvox continued. "Each will be experienced by volunteers from different species. We will measure their fear responses and prove the scale's accuracy." The first volunteer was a Kessic warrior named Thrawn, all scales and muscles and bad attitude. The Kessic were apex predators on their homeworld, afraid of basically nothing except tax audits and disappointing their mothers. They sealed Thrawn in a transparent chamber and activated the first simulation. A holographic projection of a massive predator appeared. Something with too many teeth and claws that would give children nightmares for years. It roared. Digital saliva flying. Thrawn roared back. The sound registered at 95 decibels. The chamber's sensors lit up like a festival. Display. And Milvox nodded with satisfaction. 95 decibels. Level 7 fear response. Exactly as predicted for a Kessic warrior facing a superior predator threat. They ran simulations on 6 more species. A Drellian merchant facing economic collapse, 82 decibels. A Yotharan scientist confronting impossible mathematics, 79 decibels. A Plenthorpe facing social embarrassment, which apparently was their worst nightmare, 68 decibels. The pattern held. The scale worked. Milvox was practically glowing with academic smugness. "And now," he announced, We welcome our newest applicants. Perhaps Commander Flynn would volunteer? Flynn stood, his movements precise and military. I appreciate the offer, but I'd like to suggest an alternative volunteer. Oh no. I knew where this was going. All four of my eyes widened. Flynn gestured to Tommy, who had been drawing something on a datapad. The kid looked up, blinked, and smiled. Me? If you're comfortable with it, Flynn said. It's just holograms, nothing real. Tommy shrugged with the casual indifference only children could muster when adults were making terrible decisions. Okay, can I bring Mr. Snuggles? Of course. Milvox's crystalline face managed to convey skepticism despite having no actual facial muscles. You wish to test a juvenile? The Phobo scale requires fully developed neural pathways and mature fear responses. Tommy's got plenty of fear responses, Dr. Singh said cheerfully. He's afraid of vegetables, bedtime, and missing the new episode of Captain Meteor's Space Brigade. Several delegates made sounds that the translation software interpreted as laughter. Tommy walked into the testing chamber, hugging his pink bear. Very well, Milvox said. We will calibrate for juvenile human baselines. Beginning simulation. The chamber darkened. The simulation loaded. They'd chosen something from Earth's own database of fears. A spider. Not just any spider, but a massive, hairy monstrosity with 8 legs and too many eyes and dripping fangs. It appeared right in front of Tommy, towering over him. The kid looked at it, tilted his head. Oh, hello, spider. No scream, no shriek. The decibel meter read 18. Normal speaking volume. Milvox checked his equipment. Simulation intensity increasing. The spider grew larger, added more legs, more eyes, started making clicking sounds that would haunt anyone's dreams. Tommy waved at it. You're very big. Do you eat bugs? 20 decibels. A polite question. I leaned forward. This was getting interesting. They tried 5 more simulations. Heights, darkness, monsters, loud noises. Tommy responded to each with mild curiosity and questions that suggested a disturbing lack of appropriate terror. Milvox was frantically checking his readings. This makes no sense. Human children should have heightened fear responses, evolutionary survival mechanisms. They should be screaming at these stimuli. Should they? Flynn asked. And there was something in his tone that made my sensory organs tingle with warning. Perhaps, Doctor, Singh said, her smile somehow growing wider. You should try a different approach. Show him something that humans actually find scary. These are universal fear triggers, Milvox insisted. Predators, heights, darkness, physical danger. Right, Singh said. But humans are from Earth. She said it like that explained everything. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Earth's reputation had preceded humanity's council application. Everyone had read the reports. The planet was classified as a death world, Category 9. Only 3 other known worlds ranked higher on the lethality scale. What do you suggest? Milvox asked. Singh pulled out her data pad. Tommy, sweetie, remember what happened last month at Grandma's house? Tommy's expression changed. His eyes widened. His grip on Mr. Snuggles tightened. The thing? He whispered. Yes, the thing. Tommy's voice dropped even lower. The thing in the basement? That's the one. The decibel meter spiked. 35. Then 40. Tommy's whisper was registering higher fear levels than species screaming at full volume. I watched the readings with all 4 eyes. This was impossible. Whispers didn't register fear. Screams did. The scale said so. What frightened you about the basement, Tommy? Singh asked gently. The shadow, Tommy whispered. And the meter hit 45. It moved wrong. And the smell, like old things dying. And Grandma said something lived down there. Something that watched. 50 decibels. The kid was barely audible. And he was registering higher than warriors facing death. Milvox was making sounds like a crystal glass being scraped with metal. This is impossible. The readings must be wrong. Fear produces volume. Survival, screaming. This goes against every scientific principle. Does it? Flynn asked. Or does your scale only measure one kind of fear? He walked to the chamber. Tommy ran out and hugged his leg. Flynn patted the kid's head and addressed the assembled delegates. The thing about humans, he said, is that we learned a long time ago that screaming doesn't always help. Sometimes when you encounter something truly terrifying, making noise just tells it where you are. The chamber had gone very quiet. Our ancestors survived by learning when to scream and when to shut up and hide. And the things that made us shut up, those were the things that really scared us. Not the predators we could see coming. The things we couldn't see. The things that hunted us in the dark. Dr. Singh stood. Your scale measures panic, immediate fear, fight or flight. But humans evolved a third option. Freeze. Go silent. Become invisible. Hope it passes by. Milvox was still protesting, but the child showed no fear of predators, heights, darkness. Because human children are raised on stories about predators and heights and darkness, Flynn interrupted. Tommy's watched movies with dinosaurs and dragons. He's been to Earth's oceans and seen actual predators. His aunt breeds Terran honey badgers. Multiple delegates made concerned noises. Honey badgers were in every xenobiological database with large warning labels. But the unknown, Singh continued. The things that move wrong, the shadows that shouldn't be there, the implications of something watching from where nothing should be, that's what terrifies us. She pulled up a video file. This is Tommy's uncle, recorded 3 years ago. The video showed a human male in camping equipment, sitting by a fire. He was talking normally, describing his hiking trip. Then he stopped mid-sentence. His voice dropped to almost nothing. There's something out there, he whispered. Just beyond the firelight. I can hear it breathing. The decibel meter, running in real time, showed 60 decibels. The man hadn't raised his voice at all. Nothing attacked him, Singh said. It was probably just a deer. But his brain recognized a pattern, an inconsistency, and produced a fear response measured not in volume but in the absence of it. Milvox was checking equations on his datapad. But this means the entire Phobo scale is incomplete. 3,000 years of fear research. Inadequate? Not inadequate, Flynn said. Just incomplete. You measured what most species do naturally. Humans do something else. Show us, Milvox demanded. If human fear is so different, demonstrate it properly. Flynn and Singh exchanged looks. Singh shrugged. It's your demonstration. Flynn turned to the assembly. All right. But first, I need you to understand something about Earth. We're not apex predators because we're the strongest or fastest or have the biggest teeth. We're apex predators because we're the most persistent, most adaptable, and most terrifyingly creative problem solvers on our planet. He paused. And Earth tried really hard to kill us. The lights in the chamber dimmed. On the main display, footage began playing. Earth landscapes, beautiful, deadly, diverse. Honey badgers, Flynn said, as the video showed a small, stocky animal with black and white fur. Mellivora capensis. Weight, 9 to 16 kilograms. Length, about 60 to 70 centimeters. The honey badger on screen was digging. It looked, several delegates noted, rather cute. They eat bees, Flynn continued, and snakes, and they hunt venomous cobras for fun. They've been recorded fighting lions, surviving bites from puff adders, and raiding human settlements for food. When threatened, they don't run. They don't hide. The video changed. The honey badger was facing something much larger, a predator that should have killed it easily. The honey badger charged. They attack, Flynn said quietly. Everything. Always. With absolute commitment. The delegates watched in horrified fascination as the small animal fought something 10 times its size with unhinged ferocity. Now, Flynn said, imagine being the early human who first encountered one of these. You're armed with primitive weapons. You're hunting for food. And you see this small animal and think, easy meal. The video showed what happened when humans tried that. Spoiler alert, it didn't go well for the humans. We learned, Flynn said. We learned that size doesn't always correlate with danger. That the small, quiet things can be the most terrifying. That the universe doesn't care about your expectations. He turned to Milvox. You want to measure human fear properly? Don't show us monsters. We've fought monsters. Show us a honey badger. And tell us it's evolved intelligence and learned to hold grudges. The chamber erupted in nervous sounds. Several delegates were checking if honey badgers had been included in Earth's export restrictions list. They had been. There was a collective sigh of relief. Or better yet, Dr. Singh added, tell us there's something in the room that we can't see, can't hear, but it's watching us right now, learning how we think, planning something we can't predict. The decibel meter in the testing chamber, which Tommy had left running, spiked to 70 decibels. He'd gone completely silent. That, Flynn finished, is human fear. Not the scream of panic, the silence of recognition. The understanding that somewhere, something has just noticed you, and you don't know what it's going to do about it. Milvox sat down heavily, his crystalline structure making chiming sounds. We need to recalibrate everything. Probably, Singh agreed. But here's the interesting part. It's not just humans. I bet half the species in this room have similar fear responses to specific triggers that your scale misses. You've been measuring one axis of a multidimensional problem. Over the next hour, they ran new tests. Turned out Singh was right. The Drellians showed massive fear spikes to certain social scenarios that didn't involve volume. The Plenthorpe had quiet terror responses to environmental changes. The Keswick, warriors, tough as they were, went dead silent when facing certain types of prolonged isolation scenarios. The Phobo scale wasn't wrong, it was just incomplete. I filed my report that night, knowing nobody would read it properly. Humans continue to be complicated, I wrote. Their fear responses defy standard measurement. Recommend further study, increased caution, and possibly therapy for anyone who has to work with them regularly. Tommy had recovered by dinner, happily eating something called chicken nuggets, while explaining to anyone who would listen about Mr. Snuggles' adventures. Kid was fine, resilient, probably going to grow up to be either a diplomat or a horror movie director. But as I was leaving the conference hall, I overheard Flynn talking to Singh. Think we made our point? He asked. Oh, definitely, she replied, though I feel a bit bad about traumatizing the kid with the basement story. Please. Tommy made that up. There's nothing in your mother's basement. Singh paused. Actually, there is. We don't know what it is. It moves things around. Mom leaves it snacks. Flynn stared at her. You're joking. Nope. We call it Herbert. Very polite. Never bothers anyone who doesn't bother it first. Flynn's expression suggested he was reconsidering several life choices. And that, right there, was humanity in a nutshell. They were afraid of things, sure, but they were also practical enough to leave snacks for the unknowable basement entity and give it a name. The summit concluded with agreements to redesign the fear measurement systems. Humanity's council application moved forward. And somewhere on Earth, in a basement nobody talked about, something called Herbert presumably enjoyed its snacks and continued doing whatever mysterious things it did. I went home, filed 17 more reports, and tried very hard not to think about what might be living in my apartment storage unit, because humans had taught me something important that day. The scariest things aren't always the ones that roar. Sometimes, they're the ones that whisper. Or worse, the ones that don't make any sound at all. 3 months after the Fear Quotient Summit, I got reassigned. Congratulations. Kelton pulsed in a sickly yellow color that suggested he was either lying or about to vomit. You're being promoted to Human Liaison Observer for the Council's Cultural Exchange Program. I stared at him with all 4 eyes. That sounds like a punishment disguised as a promotion. Accurate assessment, Kelton admitted, shifting to honest orange. Nobody else wants the job. You survived the summit. You understand their fear patterns. You're qualified. I watched a 7-year-old scare a roomful of diplomats by whispering. That doesn't make me qualified for anything except nightmares. Report to Integration Station Meridian in 2 cycles. A human educational group is arriving. Your job is to observe and document cultural exchanges between human juveniles and other species youth. I made a sound that the translation matrix probably rendered as profound displeasure. You're sending me to babysit? We prefer the term intercultural youth facilitation. That's just fancy babysitting. Kelton turned deep purple. Definitely indigestion this time. The humans requested you specifically. Commander Flynn said you had an open mind and 4 eyes, which means you see things others miss. Dr. Singh said you were clever. Little Tommy said you seem nice. Tommy traumatized 200 delegates, which is why we need someone who understands humans watching their children interact with ours. The council approved their membership application, VRICS. They're here to stay. We need to figure out how to coexist with them, starting with the next generation. So that's how I ended up on Integration Station, Meridian, a sprawling facility designed for cross-species education and cultural exchange. It looked like someone had built a university campus in space and forgotten to pick a consistent architectural theme. The human educational group consisted of 30 children, ages 6 to 12, accompanied by 4 teachers. Leading the group was Miss Rebecca Okonkwo, a woman with dark skin, brilliant smile, and the kind of patient energy that suggested she'd dealt with much worse than alien culture shock. Mr. Vrix, she greeted me, pronouncing my name correctly on the first try. Thank you for hosting us. The children are excited to meet everyone. I looked at the 30 small humans, who were currently examining everything on the station with disturbing intensity. One boy was trying to taste a decorative plant. A girl was interviewing a maintenance drone about its life choices. Another kid was explaining Earth's tectonic plate theory to a confused Yotharan professor. They seem very energetic, I said diplomatically. That's one word for it, Miss Okonkwo replied. Don't worry. They've been briefed on station protocols, cultural sensitivity, and the importance of not accidentally starting an interstellar incident. Accidentally? She smiled. Kids will be kids, Mr. Vrix. Human, alien, doesn't matter. They're curious, creative, and occasionally chaotic. But that's how they learn. The station had prepared mixed species activity groups. Human children would participate in educational exercises alongside young Threxians, Keswick hatchlings, Drellian cubs, and Vrelnath juveniles. The idea was fostering understanding through shared experiences. The first activity was something called cooperative problem solving. Each mixed group received a puzzle box that required multiple types of sensory input to open. The contents were supposed to be treats appropriate for each species. I observed Group 7. It contained Emma, a 9-year-old human girl with red hair and freckles. Zikthar, a young Keswick with emerald scales who kept flexing his tiny claws. Prill, a Threxian juvenile with only 2 eyes developed so far. And Luminex, a Vrelnath, youth who sparkled when thinking hard. The puzzle box sat between them. It had panels requiring visual pattern recognition, auditory sequences, tactile manipulation, and temperature sensing. Okay, Emma said, taking charge immediately. Zikthar, you've got the best claws. Try the manipulation panels. Prill, your eyes are different from mine. Check if you see patterns I don't. Luminex, your temperature sensing is better than ours. Find the heat panels. What will you do? Zikthar asked, slightly offended at being bossed around by something smaller than him. Coordinate, Emma said. Humans are really good at pattern recognition and connecting different information. I'll watch what everyone finds and figure out the sequence. It was efficient, practical, and it worked. Within 10 minutes, they'd opened the box. Inside were treats for each species, plus a small data crystal. What's this? Prill asked, holding up the crystal. Bonus content, Emma read from the box's display. A puzzle. Within the puzzle, optional challenge for advanced groups. Zikthar puffed up his scales. We're advanced. Let's do it. They plugged the crystal into the station's educational interface. A holographic riddle appeared. I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body but come alive with fears. What am I? Luminex sparkled rapidly. An echo. Correct, the system responded. Second riddle. The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I? Footsteps, Prill said immediately. Correct. Final riddle. I am taken from a mine and shut up in a wooden case, from which I am never released. And yet I am used by almost every creature. What am I? They thought about this one. Emma chewed her lip. Zikthar tapped his claws. Luminex dimmed and brightened in thinking patterns. Pencil lead, Emma said suddenly. Graphite. It's mined, put in pencils, and used for writing. Correct. Congratulations. You have unlocked the advanced challenge. The hologram changed. A new scenario appeared. You are a crew on a damaged vessel. Life support is failing. You have limited resources. Work together to survive. I watched with interest. This wasn't in the planned curriculum. Someone had programmed additional content. The simulation began. Their holographic ship was leaking atmosphere. They had to prioritize repairs, manage resources, and make difficult decisions. Emma immediately started organizing. Okay, we need to assess damage first. Zikthar, you're strongest. Check structural integrity. Prill, you can see in more spectrums. Look for energy leaks. Luminex, monitor environmental systems. What will you do? Zikthar asked again, but this time without offense. He was genuinely curious. I'll track everything and make priority calls, Emma said. Humans evolved as persistence hunters and group coordinators. We're good at keeping track of multiple problems and allocating resources. The simulation threw problems at them. Oxygen depletion, power failures, hull breaches. The young aliens handled their assigned tasks competently. Emma synthesized their reports and made decisions. Seal Section C. We can't save it. Focus power on life support for Sections A and B. Zikthar. Reinforce that bulkhead. Prill. Reroute emergency power. Luminex. Prepare the distress beacon. It was fascinating watching a 9-year-old human manage a crisis scenario designed for adult training exercises. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't screaming. She was thinking, planning, adapting. They succeeded. The simulation ended with their virtual ship stable and rescue inbound. Excellent work, the system announced. You have demonstrated advanced cooperative problem-solving, resource management, and crisis leadership. The 4 youngsters looked pleased with themselves. Zikthar extended a claw to Emma. You're pretty good for a squishy thing. You're not bad for a sparkly lizard, Emma replied, shaking his claw. Keswick didn't have a word for sparkly lizard in their language. But Zikthar understood the intent and laughed. A sound like rocks tumbling in a dryer. I filed my observation report. Human juvenile demonstrated remarkable crisis management abilities, no fear paralysis. Natural leadership emergence. Other species juveniles responded positively to human coordination. The next activity was creative expression. Each group had to produce an art piece representing their home world. Group 7 again. They had access to various materials, holographic tools, and sculpting compounds. My world has red deserts and crystal formations, Luminex said, creating a shimmering landscape. Mine has mountains and hunting grounds, Zikthar added, sculpting rocky terrain with dangerous-looking valleys. Ours has varied terrains, Prill contributed. I'll add the coastal regions where my family lives. They looked at Emma expectantly. Earth, she said slowly, has a lot of everything. She started adding to their combined landscape. Oceans that covered most of the planet. Continents with every terrain type imaginable. Mountains, deserts, forests, tundras, jungles, grasslands. Your world has all of these? Luminex asked, sparkling with confusion. Yeah, Emma said. Earth's pretty diverse. That's why we have so many different species. Every environment produced different life forms that had to adapt to local conditions. She added more details. Animals. Thousands of species. Then she did something interesting. She added humans to every environment. You live everywhere? Zikthar asked. We spread out, Emma explained. Humans started in one region but migrated across the whole planet. We adapted to every environment. Deserts, Arctic zones, mountains, islands, everywhere. How? Prill asked. Most species specialize. We're coastal. Keswick are mountain and plains. Vrelnath prefer temperate crystal zones. Emma thought about this. Humans are generalists. We're not the best at anything specific, but we're pretty good at lots of things. We can't fly, but we build aircraft. We can't breathe underwater, but we built submarines. We're not the strongest or fastest, but we learn to use tools and work together. She added something else to the landscape. Small structures, buildings, cities, technology. We adapt the environment to us when we can't adapt to it, she continued. And we change ourselves when we need to. Humans living in high mountains have different lung capacity than humans living at sea level. Humans in sunny regions have darker skin than humans in cloudier areas. We evolved rapidly because our planet kept challenging us. Your world tried to kill you, Luminex observed. Yeah, Emma agreed cheerfully. But we're stubborn. Their art piece was impressive. A combined world landscape showing 4 different planets and the species that inhabited them. The judges gave them high marks for creativity and collaboration. But I noticed something in Emma's section. In one tiny corner, barely visible unless you looked closely, she'd added a small basement with a shadow in it. I asked her about it later. Oh, that's Herbert, she said casually. Tommy told me about him. I thought he should be included. He's part of Earth too. Herbert is a mysterious entity living in someone's basement. Yeah, but he's been there for years and never hurt anyone. Dr. Singh's family leaves him snacks. He's basically a neighbor. Weird neighbor, but still. The casual acceptance of an unknowable entity as a neighbor was very human. I was learning. The final activity was storytelling. Each species was supposed to share a traditional tale from their culture. Zikthar told a Keswick hunting story about bravery and honor. Luminex shared a Vrelnath mathematical proof, disguised as poetry. Prill recounted a Threxian legend about ocean spirits and navigation. Emma thought for a moment. I'll tell you about the Endurance. Is this a hero tale? Zikthar asked eagerly. Sort of, Emma said. It's about Ernest Shackleton, a human explorer. About 110 years ago, he tried to cross Antarctica, which is Earth's southern ice continent. His ship got trapped in ice. Then the ice crushed his ship. It sank. This is a tragedy story, Luminex observed. Wait for it, Emma said. Shackleton and his crew were stranded on ice in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. Freezing temperatures. No food sources, no shelter, no communication with the rest of humanity. They should have died. The young aliens leaned in. But Shackleton didn't give up. He kept his crew together. They salvaged what they could. They camped on the ice. When the ice broke up, they used their small boats to reach an uninhabited island. Then Shackleton took 5 men and sailed one of those tiny boats across 800 miles of the worst ocean on Earth to reach a whaling station. How long did this take? Prill asked. Months. Nearly 2 years total. And here's the best part. Every single crew member survived. All 28 men made it home. Zikthar's scales rippled with approval. Your Shackleton was a mighty warrior. He was an explorer, Emma corrected. But yeah, pretty mighty. The thing is, humans do this a lot. We get into impossible situations, and instead of giving up, we get creative. We adapt. We persist. Shackleton's expedition is famous not because it succeeded in crossing Antarctica, but because it succeeded in surviving when survival should have been impossible. You celebrate a failed mission? Luminex asked, confused. We celebrate the survival, Emma explained. The refusal to quit. The problem solving. The leadership that kept everyone alive. Sometimes the best victories aren't about achieving your original goal. They're about adapting when everything goes wrong and making sure everyone gets home. I filed another report. Human juveniles demonstrate strong cultural values around persistence, adaptation, and group survival. Their stories emphasize overcoming impossible odds through creativity and Recstad, cooperation. This explains much about human behavior. The 3-month program continued. I observed hundreds of interactions. Human children playing with alien children. Learning from each other. Teaching each other. Sometimes arguing, because kids argue regardless of species, but always finding ways to work it out. Emma's group became particularly close. They chose to continue working together even when activities allowed new groupings. Near the end of the program, there was an incident. A section of the station lost gravity temporarily. Technical malfunction. Nothing dangerous, but disorienting. Several groups of children were in the affected zone. Most species juveniles panicked appropriately. Floating unexpectedly will do that. The station's safety systems activated. Soft barriers prevented collisions. Staff responded immediately. But in Section 7, something interesting happened. Emma's group didn't panic. Emma immediately took charge. Everybody calm down. This is just zero gravity. The station has safety systems. We're not in danger. How do you know? Zikthar asked, trying not to flail his limbs. Because if we were in real danger, the alarms would be different and emergency bulkheads would seal. This is just a technical problem. Someone will fix it. She was right. The alarms were broadcasting a technical difficulty tone, not an emergency evacuation signal. So what do we do? Prill asked, rotating slowly in the air. We stay together and wait for gravity to return or for staff to reach us, Emma said. In the meantime, we can practice zero-gravity movement. It's actually kind of fun, she demonstrated, pushing gently off a wall to control her direction. Small movements. Don't push too hard or you'll spin. Use surfaces to stop yourself. The other three tried it. Within minutes, they were playing a game, tossing a soft ball between them in zero gravity, laughing at their mistakes. When staff arrived to escort them to a gravity-stable zone, they found 4 children having a wonderful time instead of 4 terrified youngsters. Why weren't you scared? The responding officer asked Emma. Because fear without information is just panic, Emma replied. My teacher says humans learn to assess threats before reacting. We looked for actual danger signs. There weren't any. So, instead of being scared, we adapted to the situation. The officer, a Morphilian named Bex who pulsed confused yellow, looked at me. Is this normal human juvenile behavior? Apparently, I said. They're raised on stories about surviving impossible situations. Zero gravity is just another puzzle to solve. The program concluded with a celebration ceremony. Each mixed group presented what they'd learned about the other species in their group. Zikthar stood proudly. I learned that humans are not weak despite lacking claws and scales. They're strong in different ways. They think ahead, they plan, they never give up. Luminex sparkled brightly. I learned that humans see patterns everywhere. They connect information across different fields. They're naturally interdisciplinary, which makes them excellent problem solvers. Prill rippled his developing eye spots. I learned that humans adapt to anything. Their world challenged them constantly, and they learned to challenge it back. They're creative because they had to be. Emma smiled. I learned that every species has strengths and weaknesses. Keswick are brave and strong. Vrelnath are brilliant and logical. Threxians are perceptive and thoughtful. Humans are persistent and adaptable. Together, we're better than any of us alone. Simple wisdom from a 9-year-old that most adult diplomats struggled to grasp. After the ceremony, as families and guardians collected their youngsters, I found Miss Okonkwo. Your students handled this remarkably well, I told her. They're good kids, she replied. Curious, open-minded, willing to learn. That's all we can ask. Emma in particular showed exceptional leadership. Miss Okonkwo nodded. Emma's special. She wants to be an explorer when she grows up. Says she's going to visit every world in the council and learn all their stories. Like Shackleton? Exactly like Shackleton. But hopefully with less shipwrecking. I watched Emma saying goodbye to her group. Zikthar was teaching her a Keswick warrior gesture of respect. Luminex was giving her a small crystal that sparkled with mathematical patterns. Prill was sharing contact information so they could keep talking after the program ended. Do you think this worked? Miss Okonkwo asked me. The cultural exchange? Yes, I said. Your children and ours learned that being different doesn't mean being incompatible. They learn to work together, play together, solve problems together. That's more than many adult diplomats accomplish. Good, she said. Because humanity isn't going anywhere. We're here now, part of the galactic community. We need to figure out how to be good neighbors. Even if your basements contain mysterious entities named Herbert. She laughed. Especially then. Good neighbors respect each other's weird basement situations and don't ask too many questions. I filed my final report that evening. It was longer than usual because I had 3 months of observations to summarize. The conclusion was simple. Human juveniles integrate successfully with other species juveniles. They demonstrate adaptability, creativity, and cooperative problem-solving. Their cultural values emphasize persistence and learning from failure. Recommend continuing exchange programs and expanding to additional age groups. Humans will be valuable council members if we give them the chance to prove it. Also, they have strange relationships with unknowable entities, but this appears harmless. 6 months later, I received a message from Emma. She'd stayed in contact, as promised. The message included a photo of her with Zikthar, Luminex, and Prill. They'd met up again on a neutral station for a reunion. Dear Mr. Vrix, the message read. Thank you for watching over us during the exchange. I learned so much. Zikthar is teaching me Kessic martial arts over video calls. Luminex is helping me understand quantum mathematics. Prill is showing me Threxian poetry. We're planning to meet every year. Maybe someday we'll work together on something big, like exploring new worlds or solving really hard problems. Wouldn't that be amazing? P.S. I told them about Herbert. They want to meet him. Humans might have the weird basements, but everyone has something strange if you look close enough. That's what makes the galaxy interesting. I showed the message to Kelton. He pulsed a thoughtful green. The human child makes a good point. Every species has their oddities. Humans are just more honest about theirs. Or more comfortable with them, I suggested. Perhaps that's their real strength, Kelton mused. Not that they survive impossible situations, but that they accept the braces. Impossible is normal, and work with it anyway. I thought about Tommy whispering about basement shadows, about Emma calmly organizing in zero gravity, about humanity's stories of persistence and adaptation, about honey badgers and Herbert and humans spreading across their death world planet because they refuse to be limited by their biology. They measure fear in whispers, I said. But they measure courage in action, and they teach their children that the universe is full of challenges to overcome, not obstacles to fear. Terrifying perspective, Kelton observed. Practical one, I corrected. If you assume the universe is trying to kill you, you spend every day proving it wrong. That's very human. Kelton pulsed amused purple. And now they're teaching our children that perspective. Is that a problem? No, Kelton said. I think it might be exactly what the galaxy needs. He was right. Over the following years, the cultural exchange programs expanded. Human children and alien children learned from each other, played together, grew up understanding that different didn't mean threatening. And gradually, the galaxy changed. Not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily, persistently. In that very human way, Emma did grow up to be an explorer. She led the first mixed-species expedition to chart the outer reaches. Zikthar was her security chief. Luminex was her science officer. Prill was her communication specialist. They named their ship Endurance, because sometimes the best way to honor the past is to carry its lessons into the future. And sometimes the scariest thing isn't the monster in the darkness or the whisper in the basement. Sometimes the scariest thing is the determination of a species that looked at a death world and called it home, that faced the impossible and called it Tuesday, that measured fear in silence but measured courage in endless, stubborn, creative persistence. The honey badger never roared. It just kept fighting. And humanity, raised on, a planet that tried very hard to kill them, learned the same lesson. Never give up. Never stop adapting. Never stop being curious. And always, always leave snacks for Herbert. Because you never know when befriending the unknowable might be exactly what saves you. The galaxy is large. The universe is vast. And somewhere in all that darkness, humans are whispering to each other about the next impossible thing they're going to accomplish. Not because it's easy, but because it's there. and because someone said it couldn't be done. Which is basically an invitation as far as humans are concerned.